Krishna, Krishna, now we've gone live again. This is our third attempt this morning to start class. And everything should be working now. I just need a confirmation from... we'll wait a moment for you to join again. And then I need a confirmation that it's working. And maybe we should do kirtan again? I don't know. Okay. So can you give me a confirmation that it's working? Now it's perfect. Okay. Yeah. Minor details like plugging in my audio interface. That helps because that's where the microphone goes. Okay, so we're good. Perfect. Yes. Hare Krishna. Gauranga Nityananda. Okay, so we're going to begin reading. Most of you are back, at least half of you. For some reason, Fridays are low attendance days. I don't know why. We had more attendance when we were reading those Leelas of the gopis. Everyone seems to like the gopis more than Mahaprabhu. I don't know. Okay. So... okay. During his householder life, the Lord did not display many of the miracles which are generally expected from such personalities. But he did once perform a wonderful miracle in the house of Srinivas Thakur. While Sankirtan was in full swing, he asked the devotees what they wanted to eat. And when he was informed that they wanted to eat mangoes, he asked for a seed of a mango, although this fruit was out of season. When the seed was brought to him, he sowed it in the yard of Srinivas, and at once a creeper began to grow out of the seed. Within no time, this creeper became a full-grown mango tree, heavy with more ripened fruits than the devotees could eat. The tree remained in Srinivas's yard, and from then on, the devotees used to take as many mangoes from the tree as they wanted. Oh, it sounds like a mango desire tree. Okay, so then the question arises, why didn't Mahaprabhu perform more of these miracles? Because the more miracles he performs, the more people will believe that he's God. There are different reasons. We can cite a few. If Mahaprabhu performs miracles, then some miracle man will come. Of course, they still do, but it would even be worse. Some miracle man will come who has some mystic power or who went to a magician school, or both, and perform some miracles, and then announce to the world, or let people announce to the world that he's God, and he won't deny it. One time, I don't know if you know this, but in India, often temples will advertise that if you go see this deity or you pray to this deity, you'll get something. The deity will benedict you, will give you wealth or whatever you desire, or health or so forth, so on. And so one time a devotee asked Prabhupada, why don't we say something about Radha Rasa Bihari in Mumbai? That if you come and see this deity, then you'll get this blessing. And Prabhupada said, the problem with that is then people will come to the temple for the wrong reason. They'll come for a material reason. And that was also Prabhupada's answer to why you don't show mystic yoga. That would convince people that you're bona fide or genuine. For the same reason. They would come for the wrong reason. They would surrender to me and they'd want a blessing. Can you bless me with wealth, health, and so forth? So Prabhupada didn't want to allure people for material reasons. And Mahaprabhu also could have performed many miracles, but he decided not to. And the genuineness and of course Mahaprabhu is not advertising himself as God, but the genuineness of a sadhu is not in the miracles he can perform. And it's easy for a sadhu to become famous if they perform miracles. So when Prabhupada was discussing this, he said that if I could do some mystic thing, grab something, or here's a rasgula, like magicians do, 2 coins, no coins, here's the coin again. So if I can do some magic, either due to mystic power or being a good magician, that's not the qualification of a sadhu. And when Prabhupada was asked, well, these sadhus, they have mystic power. What's your mystic power? And he pointed to the devotees and he said, these are all Americans. They were all hippies. They knew nothing about Krishna. Now they're sadhus, they're Vaishnavas, they're Brahmins. He said, that's my mystic power. And no so-called mystic has ever done that. So that means Prabhupada has the greatest mystic power. And so that's how Prabhupada wanted to be understood, not as someone who can create some magic. Because that's not what a real sadhu does. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, how do you know a real sadhu? You will know a real sadhu by the fact that his presence changes people's hearts. So maybe I'm a sadhu, I have mystic power, but have I changed anyone's heart? Have I transformed their lives from material to spiritual? So Prabhupada's demonstration of his power was in line with his mission. So he demonstrated the power that he could make people who were not really qualified or had no exposure to bhakti, he could make them pure devotees. He could make them spiritual masters. He could send them around the world. And they also could change the hearts of other people. That's the real qualification. Hare Krishna. So we'll continue reading. The Lord had a very high estimation of the affection of the damsels of Brajabhumi, Vrindavan, for Krishna, and in appreciation of their unalloyed service to the Lord. Once, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chanted the holy names of the gopis, cowherd girls, instead of the names of the Lord. And so he was appreciating the love of the gopis, and he was coming to taste that love. That was the internal reason. He couldn't understand. He could see that Radha and the gopis had more love for him than he had for them, and he was intrigued by it. And he didn't know what it was. He didn't have that experience, and he wanted to experience it. So now as Mahaprabhu, he has come to experience what Radha is experiencing, especially in the last 12 years of his life. But still, in this incident, he's appreciating the gopis, so he's saying the name of the gopis. At this time, some of his students, who were also his disciples, came to see him. And when they saw that the Lord was chanting the names of the gopis, they were astonished. Out of sheer foolishness, they asked the Lord why he was chanting the names of the gopis, and advised him to chant the name of Krishna. It's kind of like Ramchandra Puri telling his guru at the end of life, meditate on Brahman. It's unfortunate to have a disciple like that, isn't it? You have a disciple, you're in the mood of the gopis experiencing ecstasy, and it's like, hey Gurudev, why are you chanting the name of the gopis? You should chant Hare Krishna. Just disturbance. The students were almost the same age as the Lord, and thus they wrongly thought of the Lord as one of their peers. They held a meeting and resolved that they would attack the Lord if he dared to punish them again in such a manner. Wow. What kind of students are they? This incident provoked some malicious talks about the Lord on the part of the general public. Not good. Just see. And you would think, this is 500 years ago, you would think, okay, these are students. They would respect their teacher. And Prabhupada's saying, but they were at the same age, more or less. So they thought, oh, he's he's deviated, so we have to put him in line. And they were going to fight back if he tried to punish them. And now this news was getting out, and it wasn't looking good. Why wasn't it looking good? Well, it's explained in the next paragraph. When the Lord became aware of this, he began to consider the various types of men found in society. He noted that especially the students, professors, fruitive workers, yogis, non-devotees, and different types of atheists were all opposed to the devotional service of the Lord. Quote, "My mission is to deliver all the fallen souls of this age," he thought. "But if they commit offenses against me, thinking me to be an ordinary man, they will not benefit. If they are to begin their life of spiritual realization, they must some way or other offer obeisances unto me." Thus the Lord decided to accept the renounced order of life, sannyas, because people in general were inclined to offer respects to a sannyasi. Now, this is amazing. I mean, think about this. Have you ever been disrespected? Let me guess. Okay, let me think. Oh, probably yes, right? Yeah, probably happened to you sometime in your life. Right? Maybe it happens to you all the time. Well, you're not God, so, don't take it so seriously. Even God's being disrespected. That's amazing, isn't it? I mean, just try to understand the nature of this world. It's a horrible place. That even God comes as an incarnation and people are chastising him and not listening to him and challenging him and disrespecting him and planning to retaliate if he in anywhere dares to correct them or punish them. They're going to retaliate and punish him. I mean, what a horrible place. So now Mahaprabhu is thinking, okay, how will I spread my mission if people don't listen? And one of the reasons a preacher will take sannyas is because the sannyas ashram is respected. Of course, you have to live like a sannyasi, otherwise you don't deserve to be respected, and eventually you won't be if you don't live properly. But the sannyas ashram is respected. And if one is not respected, then people do not listen to them. We listen to those we respect. And the more we respect, the more we believe, the more faith we have, the better we can listen, the better we can learn. So that was Mahaprabhu's consideration. 500 years ago, the condition of society was not as degraded as it is today. At that time, people would show respects to a sannyasi, and the sannyasi was rigid in following the rules and regulations of the renounced order of life. And of course, now things are more degraded, where you get spiritual leaders who often do not, we'll just say, they're not good boys, if you know what I mean. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was not very much in favor of the renounced order of life in this age of Kali, but that was only for the reason that very few sannyasis in this age are able to observe the rules and regulations of sannyas life. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu decided to accept the order and become an ideal sannyasi so that the general populace would show him respect. One is duty-bound to show respect to a sannyasi, for a sannyasi is considered to be the master of all varnas and ashramas. So it is said, when you see a sannyasi, you should pay obeisances, and if you fail to pay obeisances, you should fast that day. So all of those of you who like to eat, make sure when you see a sannyasi, you pay obeisances. And Maharaj will say, thank you, Hare Krishna. I'm unqualified of your obeisance. And you'll say, no, Maharaj, I'm just like, I want to eat today. If I don't pay obeisance to you, then I'm not going to eat. That's why I did it. No, you won't say that, but You might think that. So I have a story for you. The first sannyasi in ISKCON was Kirtan Ananda, which is like 68, I think. And then the next batch of sannyasis that I know of was 1970. I think there were 4. Brahmananda, Gargamuni, Maharaj, Vishnu Jan Swami, and I think maybe Subal Maharaj, maybe one other. I had just come to Los Angeles to take second initiation, and right around that time, Prabhupada had given them sannyas. And then I think Satsvarup Maharaj, Vidananda Maharaj were around 1972. And I was going to tell a story about this. And I completely forgot the story. Well, let me see what we were reading to spark my memory. Mahaprabhu decided to accept the order, become an ideal sannyasi, Jana published with Swami. Oh yeah, I remember. So, now these sannyasis were in their early 20s. And all of us were in our early 20s. So, nowadays, I think you can't take sannyas unless you're over 40 or 50. And most of the sannyasis who took when they were younger, of course, are older. And of course, because the movement is older now, you have lots of younger devotees. So the younger devotees are like the age of the children, or what could even be the grandchildren of these sannyasis. If any of you are like 20, early 20s, you could be my grandchild. If I have a son when I'm 25, 25 years later I'm 50, if I have a son, I actually had a son when I was 23, I think. But he just got married recently. But if he got married when he was 23, then that would be 46 years. Anyway, do the math. I guess I'm a little sleepy today, but anyway, my son is 47 now, so he's 47, so he could have easily a 25-year-old or 24. Yeah, so if you're like 25 or under, you could be my grandchild. Isn't that amazing? So, if I'm a sannyasi, and, I'm walking around and people are paying obeisances and they're all like 20 years old or 25. It's like, okay, it's awkward. We don't want people to pay obeisances to us. But so this time it was all the godbrothers and godsisters who were the same age paying obeisances to the sannyasi every time they saw him. So if he would just walk out of his room into the temple, everyone would be falling down all along the way. And then when he was going back, everybody would be falling down paying obeisances. And of course, it's great if you're proud, you'll love it. But they didn't love it. And so they asked Prabhupada, they said, this is really awkward. So then Prabhupada said, that's when he introduced in the morning, we would chant, Bancha kalpa tarubhyascha kapashindubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. That's when he introduced that. I don't know if you know that. That's when it came. As far as my memory goes, that's when he introduced it. And he said, we will offer obeisances to all the Vaishnava devotees every day in the morning. And that will be good. That will be your validation for the whole day. So every time you see a sannyasi, you don't have to pay obeisances anymore because you did it in the morning, and that's good. It lasts for 24 hours, something like that. It's a 24-hour pass not to have to pay obeisances to sannyasis. Of course, doesn't mean you couldn't if you wanted to, and you certainly may feel that way, but the sannyasis themselves were feeling awkward. So that's the story on that. It was very interesting when Prabhupada made these 4 men sannyasis. No, it was Madhuvisa. Brahmananda Garga Muni, Madhuvisha, and Vishnujan Swami. So it was very interesting because I was living in San Francisco and Madhuvisa Maharaj was the president. And this was like the first time in ISKCON, aside from Kirtanananda, which was a rare event. And he stayed in New Vrindavan. He didn't travel, so nobody really saw him. Now, San Francisco temple, it's in a city. It's a lively temple. It's very young in the movement, 1970. We had a sannyasi living with us. So that was like, wow. There are 5 sannyasis in ISKCON, and one of them is your temple president. And so the devotees would say, we have to be serious. A sannyasi is living in our midst. It's like, whoa, okay. You know, it was new. I was like, this is sacred order. We're living with this. It's almost like sainthood in the Catholic Church. So it was taken very seriously, and we were very respectful. And usually the sannyasis ended up giving all the classes and like that. So we highly respected the sannyasis. Things happened later on in ISKCON. If some sannyasis fell into difficulty or broke principles, naturally, when one has a problem, you tend to lose respect for the other, for the order of itself. Like, how can I take it seriously if these sannyasis are not following? So that's unfortunate. That did happen a little bit later on. But we had great respect for the sannyasis. At least initially, we still do. But especially then. While he was contemplating accepting the sannyas order, it so happened that Keshav Bharati, a sannyas of the Mayavadi school and resident of Katwa in Bengal, visited Navadvip and was invited to dine with the Lord. When Keshav Bharati came to his house, the Lord asked him to award him the sannyas order of life. This was a matter of formality. The sannyas order is to be accepted from another sannyasi. Although the Lord was independent in all respects, still, to keep up the formalities of the Shastras, he accepted the sannyas order from Keshav Bharati, although Keshav Bharati was not in the Vaishnava Sampradaya. After consulting with Keshav Bharati, the Lord left Navadvip for Katwa to formally accept the sannyas order of life. He was accompanied by Srila Nityananda Prabhu, Chandrasekhar Acharya, and Mukunda Datta. I told the story before. I said I didn't know who knew he was going to take sannyas. Nobody knew, but they knew. Those 3 assisted. They knew before he left. That's why they assisted him. They knew he was going to do it. I guess Mahaprabhu asked them to come. Those 3 assisted him in the details of the ceremony. The incident of the Lord's accepting the sannyas order is very elaborately described in the Chaitanya Bhagavat by Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur. So we had told that story last week. And, Mahaprabhu he's taking sannyas to get respect. And so it appears that Mayavad sannyas was, as we say in America, the only game in town. And that was the only kind of sannyas that was given. And in order to be respected, he took that. But as I told in the last story, then how could he take from a Mayavad? And Mahaprabhu had he had a dream. In the dream, the sannyas mantra came. And he said to Keshav Bharati, are you going to give me this mantra? And he gave Keshav Bharati the mantra. And it's understood at that point that was Mahaprabhu initiating Keshav Bharati into Vaishnavism. So Keshav Bharati became converted. So even though externally it looks like he was taking from a Mayavad, at that point Keshav Bharati was actually a devotee. And I believe also when after the barber shaved his head, he was so reluctant, he didn't want to do it because Mahaprabhu was very beautiful. And everybody felt this was like a very horrible thing. Especially young boys didn't take sannyas. That was very rare, if at all, ever. And, well, it was not so rare amongst the Mayavads, but generally you would be older. So he was really reluctant. Finally, he agreed, and then he said, after this, I will never shave my head. He went into another shave. I never will cut anyone's hair. He was traumatized by it, and he went into a different occupation. I was completely traumatized by shaving Mahaprabhu's head. Everybody was traumatized by it. It was like this part of his beauty. It's kind of his brand. Beautiful long hair, and it's like shaved it off. Renunciation. So, I'm going to go back and see if you have anything to say about what we've said. Any comments or questions? Sometimes you all are speechless. And it appears. Now you are speechless. Which can either be one of two things. You're so ecstatic you can't speak, or you fell asleep while I was reading. I'm not sure which one. Well, maybe there's a third option. You just, no, read more, we like it. Okay, maybe the third option is the correct one. Thus, at the end of his 24th year, the Lord accepted the sannyas order of life in the month of Magha. Magha. I'm trying to pronounce everything properly because generally most devotees don't pronounce it properly. I can't say I'm 100%, but generally I get it right. That way you get to hear the proper pronunciation instead of the American equivalent. Or not even equivalent. The American, what's the word I want to use? Pollution? There's a word for that when you mess up pronunciation. After accepting this order, he became a full-fledged preacher of Bhagavata Dharma. Bhagavata Dharma. Although he was doing the same preaching work in his householder life, when he experienced some obstacles to his preaching, he sacrificed even the comfort of his home life for the sake of the fallen souls. In his household life, his chief assistants were Srila Advaita Prabhu and Srila Srivas Thakur. There's two ways of pronouncing these, just so you know. I can say Srila Srivas Thakur, or I could say Srila Srivasa Thakura. So Srila Srivasa Thakura is proper Sanskrit. And then when you go into Bengal, or you go in different parts of India, they would tend to drop the A at the end. Not Advaita. Generally you wouldn't say Advait, although you could, but you would say Srila Srivas Thakur. That's how you would say in Bengali. Sriva, or you actually say Srivas Thakur. Srivas Thakur. That's how you would say. Srila Nityananda Prabhu, who was deputed to preach specifically in Bengal. No, he accepted the sannyas order. His chief assistants became Srila Nityananda Prabhu, who was deputed to preach specifically in Bengal, and the six Goswamis, Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, Jiva Goswami, Gopal Bhatta Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, headed by Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatan. The six Goswamis, headed by Srila and Rupa and Sanatan, who were deputed to go to Vrindavan to execute the present places of pilgrimage. The present city of Vrindavan and the importance of Brajabhumi were thus disclosed by the will of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Mahaprabhu traveled to South India for 6 years, and then he came and spent 12 years, the last 12 years of his life in Jagannath Puri. He ordered Nityananda Prabhu to stay in Bengal, and the six Goswamis went to Vrindavan, and they excavated, and Mahaprabhu also went there. He found Radhakund, Shyamakund. There was a little puddle there he found. So they were to excavate the holy places and re-establish. It was just apparently just a forest, and nobody really knew where everything was, or not much was known. The Lord, or if you're from New York, the Lard. Some devotees say that. I find that quite funny when I hear them saying, Lard Krishna. I'm not from New York, so you don't have to worry, I won't say lard. The Lord, after accepting the sannyas order, at once wanted to start for Vrindavan. For 3 continuous days he traveled in Radha Desh, places where the Ganges does not flow. He was in full ecstasy over the idea of going to Vrindavan. However, Srila Nityananda Prabhu diverted his path and brought him instead to the house of Advaita Prabhu in Shantipur. Mahaprabhu was so ecstatic. He thought the Ganga was the Jamuna. He thought, we've been traveling for 3 days. Oh, he didn't know how many days. We must be in Vrindavan. So when he saw the Ganga, he thought it was Jamuna. However, Srila Nityananda Prabhu diverted his path and brought him instead to the house of Advaita Prabhu in Shantipura. The Lord stayed at Sri Advaita Prabhu's house for a few days, and knowing well that the Lord was leaving his hearth and home. Oh, Prabhupada didn't even describe the leaving Mahaprabhu for sannyas, and what happened to his wife. Oh, what a scene. And his mother, what a scene. You have to read Chaitanya Bhagavat. It's described there. Definitely, if you can get a hold of Chaitanya Bhagavat, probably you can get it online. Read that story about the Lord taking sannyas. It's really beautiful. The Lord stayed at Sri Advaita Prabhu's house for a few days, and knowing well that the Lord was leaving his hearth and home for good, Sri Advaita Prabhu sent his men to Nabadvip to bring Mother Sachi to have a last meeting with her son. Some unscrupulous people say that Lord Chaitanya met his wife also after taking sannyas and offered her his wooden slipper for worship. But the authentic sources give no information about such a meeting. His mother met him at the house of Advaita Prabhu, and when she saw her son in sannyas dress, she lamented. By way of compromise, she requested her son to make his headquarters in Puri, so that she would be able to get information about him. The Lord granted this last desire of his beloved mother. After this incident, the Lord started for Puri, leaving all the residents of Nabadvip in an ocean of lamentation over his separation. So, one cannot see one's wife after he takes sannyas. But he can see other members of the family. Prabhupada never saw his wife, but he did see his sons, his sister. That's okay. Because the strongest attachment is to the wife. And so that is not allowed. Because one has left the wife. Really, they're leaving the wife. Because Prabhupada said, home means wife. If you live in a home and you're not married, you're not a grihasta. Grihasta, although it means griha means home. One who is situated, grihasta literally means asta, astita, griha. One who's situated in a house. One who's in a house. Well, obviously we all have to live somewhere, in some kind of house or some dwelling. So just because you live in a house, you're not a grihasta. Just because you don't live in the brahmachari or brahmacharini, brahmacharini. No American's going to talk like that. You're just going to say brahmacharini. But it's not brahmacharini, it's brahmacharini. Brahmachari. Anyway, I'll forgive you for mispronunciation. I do it all the time. But, so, when you live at home with a wife, then you're a grihastha. So, for sannyasi, they cannot see their wives again. It's not allowed. Not proper. Okay. So as we said before, the Lord granted the desire of his mother that he would reside in Puri, but before that, he traveled throughout South India to show mercy on the South Indians. The Lord visited many important places on the way to Puri. He visited the temple of Gopinathji, who had stolen condensed milk for his devotee Srila Madhavendra Puri. And that's in Remuna. On the way. If you go from Bhubaneswar, I believe Bhubaneswar to Puri, you can turn off a road and see that deity. I've never been. Since then, deity Gopinathji is well known as Chira Chora Gopinatha. Chira means sweet rice. Chora means steals. And Gopinath is Gopinath. The Gopinath who steals sweet rice. The Lord relished the story with great pleasure. The propensity of stealing is there even in the absolute consciousness. But because the propensity is exhibited by the absolute, it loses its perverted nature and thus becomes worshipable even by Lord Chaitanya on the basis of the absolute consideration that the Lord and his stealing propensity are one and identical. This interesting story of Gopinathji is vividly explained in the Chaitanya Charitamrita by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. So, this sweet rice is special. Madhavendra Puri went to this temple because this sweet rice is famous, and he wanted to make this sweet rice for his deity. It's that famous, that good. So, what about Krishna stealing? Is it okay if Krishna steals? Let's take a vote. Okay, God is the supreme moralist, and stealing is bad. It says it right there in the Ten Commandments. Raise your hand if you think it's okay for God to steal. My hand's up. Now, for ordinary moralists, they might not put their hand up. But is it okay for God to do whatever he wants? Yes or no? Well, I don't think God should steal. That's not right. It sets a bad example. You know, like if my son reads that story and he's just a little boy, then he's going to steal. No. Actually, if your son reads the story about Krishna stealing, it will purify him of his desire to steal. Just like if you read the story about Krishna dancing with other men's wives, it will purify men's desire to dance with other men's wives. That's the idea. It works. It has the opposite effect of what you might expect. Because this is transcendental. Mm-hmm. So, the answer to any question is it okay if Krishna does this? The answer obviously is yes. We have no problem because everything is good that Krishna does. Okay. After visiting the temple of Chira Chora, Chira Chora Gopinatha. That's, of course, nobody would say it that way. They would say Chira Chora Gopinatha of Remuna and Balazor in Orissa. The Lord proceeded towards Puri and on the way visited the temple of Sakshi Gopal, who appeared as a witness in the matter of two Brahmanas devotees' family quarrel. The Lord heard the story of Sakshi Gopal with great pleasure because he wanted to impress upon the atheist that the worshipable deity in the temple, approved by the great acharyas, are not idols. as alleged by men with a poor fund of knowledge. So this story is so nice. A young man was taking an elderly man, I think he was a Brahmin, to see the deity. And they traveled, and the young man took such good care of him. He said, I want to offer you my daughter. And the boy said, I'm not really qualified. I don't think your family will appreciate it. He said, no. He said, okay, well, maybe they won't believe it, so you need to make the vow in front of the deity. So he vowed, you will marry my daughter in front of the deity, this Gopal deity. And when the family found out about it, because this boy was not, they didn't think he was suitable. And so the family found out about it, they were outraged. And they started making up lies that, he got my father intoxicated and then my father said that, or he made him say it, And the boy wasn't even attached. He didn't know the girl, he didn't want to do it from the beginning. But because the father had made the vow, the boy was thinking, I have to marry her to protect the father because he's made this vow in front of the deity. And so the son of the father was speaking lies and demeaning this person, saying this person has made this up, he's poisoned my father, and got him intoxicated like that. And the boy said, but my father made this vow in front of the deity. And I believe the way the story goes, well, if the deity can witness and, tell us, speak, then yeah, okay. And so this boy had so much faith in the deity. He went to the deity and started speaking to him. And he said, this is the predicament, and you have to, I can't carry you. You have to walk to this place, because unless you come here and testify, no one's going to believe you. And deity said, what makes you think I can walk? And the deity's talking to him. And the boy said, well, you're talking to me, so if you can talk, you can walk. And deity said, okay, you got me on that one. That's the way Prabhupada explained the story. He said he outsmarted the deity. He didn't outsmart the deity, but by logic, deity had to agree. So then the agreement was, what this boy said, okay, I will follow you. I will walk behind you. But if you turn around to look at me, that's where I stop. So he could hear the deity walking, the ankle bells. Maybe somebody remembers the story better than I do, but I think at one point he didn't hear any ankle bells, so he turned around, and there the deity was, and then deity stopped there. But fortunately, it was right on the outskirts of the city, and they brought everyone in the city, and the deity testified, yes. This old man did promise this young boy that he would give his daughter in marriage. And Sakshi means witness, and that's why he's called Sakshi Gopal. And I forgot to say that. In the story of Madhavendra Puri, I forgot this. Madhavendra Puri, as I said, these are deity stories which are build faith in the deities. Deities walking and the deities stealing sweet rice. So Madhavendra Puri came because he wanted to taste the sweet rice, because he wanted to offer it to his deity. That was his intention. But he was thinking about the sweet rice before it was offered, and he thought, I'm a rascal. I'm thinking about this. It's not even offered. And he went away. And the deity brought sweet rice to him. Or the deity arranged it. So, these are nice stories of deities. Speaking, talking, moving around. We're also told that Bunka Bihari in Vrindavan, he once once or more than once, walked off the altar to be with his devotees. The Lord heard the story of Sakshi Gopal with great pleasure because he wanted to impress upon the atheist that the worshipable deities in the temples approved by the great acharyas are not idols, as alleged men with a poor fund of knowledge. As alleged, not as alleged men. As alleged by men with a poor fund of knowledge. The deity in the temple is the archa, incarnation of the personality of Godhead, and thus the deity is identical with the Lord in all respects. He responds to the proportion of the devotee's affection for him. In the story of Sakshi Gopal, in which there was a family misunderstanding by two devotees of the Lord, in order to mitigate the turmoil as well as to show special favor to his servitors, the Lord traveled from Vrindavan to Vidyanagara, a village in Orissa, in the form of his Archa incarnation. From there, the deity was brought to Katak, and thus the temple of Sakshi Gopal is even today visited by thousands of pilgrims, on the way to Jagannath Puri. The Lord stayed overnight there and began to proceed toward Puri. On the way, his sannyas rod was broken by Nityananda Prabhu. That's in CC Madhya 197, chapter 1, verse 97. The Lord became apparently angry with him about this and went alone to Puri, leaving his companion behind. Mahaprabhu became a Tridandi sannyasi by the breaking of his staff by Nityananda Prabhu. Okay. Radhapriya says, I heard that if you cut the hair of someone, you obtain all the good karma of that person. Is this true? I never heard. If it's true, the barbers, they should all have amazing karma, But barbers is not considered like such a high-end profession from the Brahminical perspective. Everything belongs to Krishna anyway. How could he steal anything? Exactly, good answer. Just like, how could he steal anyone's wives? They all belong to him. Deal was if the boy turns, then the deity will stop walking. Yeah. But the question is, did he turn because... I think he turned because he didn't hear the ankle bells anymore. Like the deity stopped for some reason. Because he heard ankle bells. You imagine you're walking and you hear ankle bells and you know it's Krishna behind you and you can't turn around and look. Wow, that would be difficult. Okay. So now he's in Puri. At Puri, when he entered the temple of Jagannath, he became at once saturated with transcendental ecstasy and fell down on the floor of the temple, unconscious. The custodians of the temple could not understand the transcendental feats of the Lord. But a great learned Pandit named Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was present, and he could understand that the Lord's losing his consciousness upon entering the Jagannath temple was not an ordinary thing. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was the chief appointed Pandit in the court of the king of Orissa, Maharaj Prataparudra, was attracted by the youthful luster of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and could understand that such a transcendental trance was only rarely exhibited, and only then by the topmost devotees who are already on the transcendental plane in complete forgetfulness of material existence. Only a liberated soul could show such a transcendental feat. And the Bhattacharya, who was vastly learned, could understand this in the light of the transcendental literature with which he was familiar. He therefore asked the custodians of the temple not to disturb the unknown sannyasi. In other words, Mahaprabhu was exhibiting various ecstatic symptoms, ecstatic emotions, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya understood. He asked them to take the Lord to his home so he could be further observed in his unconscious state. The Lord was at once carried to the home of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who at that time had sufficient power of authority due to his being the Shabha Pandit, or the dean of the faculty in Sanskrit literatures. Shabha Pandit. Shabha means association, or this, I guess, the faculty. The faculty of the Association of Pundits. The learned Pandit wanted to scrutinizingly test the transcendental feats of Lord Chaitanya, because some people fake it, so they wanted to see if it was real. Because of 10 unscrupulous, not of 10, because often, that's interesting, of 10. Of 10 means often. 10 or more times it happens. Often, unscrupulous devotees imitate physical feats in order to flaunt transcendental achievements just to attract innocent people and take advantage of them. A learned scholar like Bhattacharya can detect such impostors. And when he finds them out, he at once rejects them. So this is a sad story for you, but quite funny. And some of you have heard this story. That, people in India, they respect sadhus, highly respect sadhus, and they're not so discriminate about who is a sadhu and who isn't. So, crying is a symptom of ecstasy, and so if you're chanting and crying, people will think, bhava, this person is experiencing bhava, he's very rare and elevated soul. And so we've heard stories that sometimes in order to gain wealth or fame or both, what's the good of being famous if you're not wealthy, right? So, but if you're famous, you can become wealthy. So probably you're not going to be famous without being wealthy. There's a story of a guitarist. He was on the cover of a guitar magazine. It said he was, one of the world's best guitarists. And he wrote in a letter, or he's a mandolin player, he said, does it mean now I can pay my rent? He was voted as he was like famous, but he had no money. He's like, great, just give me money, I don't need fame. So there are examples of that. But anyway, that's another point. So, we've heard stories of these people. They put on saffron, go out to work in saffron, and they take chili and they put chili in their nose. And then they chant. And of course, if you put chili in your nose, I don't advise doing this experiment, but you could imagine you would start sniffling and crying, and you could also do it with onions, I guess. Get some onion oil and put it in your eyes and you'll be crying. And you're chanting Hare Krishna, you're crying, so people think, here's the real deal. He's chanting Hare Krishna and he's crying. He must be experiencing symptoms of ecstasy. Then they become well known, they can manipulate people because of their so-called influence. So, Bhattacharya understood this, and he just wanted to double check that this was real. In the case of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Bhattacharya tested all the symptoms in light of the Shastras. He tested as a scientist, not as a foolish sentimentalist. Because anybody can put chilies up their nose, plus you could roll on the ground during kirtan. But that's another symptom. Anybody could do that. Not everybody can renounce the world. Not everybody can chant 64 rounds a day. Those are symptoms which are more difficult to imitate, but these other ones are imitatable, if that's a word. He observed the movement of the stomach, the beating of the heart, and the breathing of the nostrils. He also felt the pulse of the Lord and saw that all his bodily activities were in complete suspension. When he put a small cotton swab before the nostrils, he found there was a slight breathing as the fine fibers of cotton moved slightly. Thus he came to know that the Lord's unconscious trance was genuine, and he began to treat him in the prescribed fashion. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could only be treated in a special way. So he was using the normal protocol to help a person who's in this state, which it's kind of like, at least it appears externally to be some kind of diseased, obviously not a normal state. So he's trying to bring him back to normalcy. Normalcy. Yeah, I think that's the word. I make up words, I don't know. I think I'm Shakespeare or something. Whatever. I make up Spanish words also. I just put an O at the end. It seems to work for me. If all you had to do is put O at the end of every word, you could speak Spanish, right? Righto, couldo, speako, Spanisho. Yeah, that's it. You'd probably drive people crazy speaking like that, right? So Mahaprabhu would not respond to the normal protocol that would awaken or bring a person back to consciousness. He would respond only to the resounding of the holy names of the Lord by his devotees. This special treatment was unknown to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya because the Lord was still unknown to him. When the Bhattacharya saw him for the first time in the temple, he simply took him to be one of the many pilgrims. He didn't know who he was, and his brother, His brother was a devotee, Gopinath Acharya. And his brother, he was talking with his brother about Lord Chaitanya. And his brother's like, forget it. I mean, you can never understand him. You're not a devotee. All you just speculate this and that. He said, you have to get mercy. You have to get his mercy, then you can understand, which happened eventually. But now, I'm sad to say, it's time to go. I think I have a kirtan in a half hour, and I have not eaten breakfast. So I'm going to have to leave you. Let me confirm. Well, no, it's not. It's on Sunday. We have a class today at 3, my time. EDT, if you're in England, that's going to be at 7. It's not so late. Or some parts of Europe, it'll be 8 o'clock. And if you can attend this class, it's going to be special because it's on women. So, it's a hot topic. Hear my ankle bells? Yeah. So, this morning I was doing some preparation for the story. And I was reviewing some of the female issues that are going on in the church, different churches. And it's very, very similar to what's going on today. And in one church, unfortunately I forget, they now have female priests and pastors. And there was an interview with one of the pastors. And every comment I read was negative. Like, this is bogus, this is wrong. Because they've had this tradition, it's only male. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't mean it's not validated in their scripture. It just means they never had it and people believe it's wrong. It was very interesting to see the reaction. No, I think it was the ankle bells. Oh, here's Sadhyarupa says, The deity said, "You can't see me walk." So the boy asked, "How will I know you're walking?" He said, "You'll hear my ankle bells." Then they stopped. He turned around. I guess that's where Sakshigopal wanted to stop. Right. So hopefully there's an ad on Facebook for this class. It's translated into Italiano. No capisco Italiano. But I will speak in English. And it will be translated, and you're all invited to join. It'll be interesting. Especially good for men to understand more about what Prabhupada said about women, and maybe a more balanced way than you may be accustomed to hearing. And also good for women who sometimes become confused or discouraged by things the Shastra says about women. We have... we're going to show quotes from Prabhupada maybe you haven't heard, which are not typical of what you may hear. So stay tuned for that. Hare Krishna to all of you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Go Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol.